Now let's talk about JSON objects. So sometimes what happens is, in the last example, what we got was we were getting the complete HTML. But whenever we do a network-based request, whenever we work on, say, a client-server model, so what happens is we always get some sort of objects. May it be a SOAP web service that I'm hitting, may it be a JSON web service that I'm hitting. So whenever I talk about such web services or such web method calls, alright, so I'll show you an example wherein I'll be using a JSON call. So the JSON, as everybody would be aware about, is the JavaScript Object Notation. Is a data exchange format which is very condensed. So when I talk about condensity of this particular object is, it actually preserves all the objects as key value pairs. Alright, so the JSON objects are based on the key value pairs. The key here is a string, and the object value can be a number, string, boolean, or even an object. So if I'm passing an object from a web service, so that is how I'll be using the JSON object. You can see the syntax. It is, as I told you, it is a name value pair. The data is always separated by comma, and curly braces holds the object. Just remember the syntax, complete syntax here. So the curly braces holds the objects, and the square brackets hold the array. So here you can see one is the object example that you have here. So you have name value pairs. Name is key name is name, and the value is Edureka. Key name is course, and the value is Android. Similarly, if I have to have multiple objects, I can have an array which is, say, company, and I can have name Edureka, course Android, name Edureka, course iOS. Just make sure that this particular value is cascaded in a square braces. So here I'll be showing you an example wherein what I'll be doing is I'll be reading all the tweets from the Twitter API. So the Twitter API is an API which gives me a get method. So as I told you, in the get method, what I have is I have access to all the parameters that I can pass onto the URL. Alright. So here, if I just show you an example of a JSON. So here I have created a string which says complete data, a text view which will be used to show the data to the user, the name edit box which I'll just show you here. Here is the name edit box. You can see it in the graphical representation. Then what I'm doing is I'm getting a client. I create a new default HTTP client. Alright, get the username, then call the get tweets method. So what this get tweets method will do for me is it will take the username from me, call the tweets method here, it takes the username, creates a JSON array, string builder, URL is the one that I'm passing here. So URL string, if you would have seen, here is the JSON API. I'll just show it to you. Alright, so this is the JSON API that I have here. Now anybody has a Twitter account, you can just give me your ID and I'll just append this particular account to yours, and I'll show you everybody that what all have been the recent feeds by you. So anybody who has a Twitter account, if you want me to show your data here, I can just have it. So Sandeep says, I Sandeep. It does not have any particular tweets, Sandeep, in the last few days here. Any other Twitter account from anyone? And Aaron.Raj. It's not existing. Let me just try out others. And here you can see. So here you can see there are various APIs that are available to you on Twitter, which will give you all the objects. So you can see this complete thing contains the complete object. Can you all see that? As you can see, it is a square braces here. Alright, here is the square braces and here is the curly braces. So a curly braces will be holding an object and a square braces will be holding all the objects. Alright, so Sandeep wants to have access to all the Shreya Ghoshal tweets. So let's see what all Shreya Ghoshal has posted in the last few days. Not available to you. She hasn't posted anything yet. Alright. So it seems Shreya Ghoshal does not want us to see her posts at present, but we are seeing Sandeep's posts for sure. Alright. So let's see how this example runs up, and then I'll be explaining you the complete example code for this. So here if I say again the same Sandeep Datta I'll be using, I'll say SAN, I say Sandeep, I click on show tweets, it will show that it is loading the data, and you can see all the tweets from Sandeep. And here are the tweets from Sandeep. Sandeep, can you just make sure that these are all the tweets that you did in the last few days? And yes, he confirms that. Right. So this is a Twitter API that is available to everyone. If you want to read the various tweets, you just need to know the login account. That is the username for this Twitter account, and it will show you all the tweets. How are we doing it? So we have a string URL. So this is the string URL which will be appending the name to. Alright. So this is the API. Create a HTTP client. Get the username. Get tweets. Let's go into get tweets here. Get tweets extends the async task because I cannot do a network operation on the UI thread. I say do in background. Create an array of all the objects. Apart from Twitter, can we do it for other websites which do not use JSON? Is a question that is asked to me by Devdutt. So Devdutt, what happens is in a client-server interaction, it is always there has to be a common path, right? So if the server is not giving me the JSON objects, I cannot handle those JSON objects in my application. If the server is returning me SOAP objects, how can I use the JSON objects for that sake? So there has to be a common path. And in this particular API, we are having that common path, and that is the JSON here. That's correct. We have to be aware about the common path. For example, if I talk about when we develop some applications for the clients, right? So what we do is we have a server that is we have a web services at our end. So we just decide upon which web services we want to use. Do we want to use the SOAP web services? Do we want to use the JSON web services, or do we want the XML parsers? Alright, so we decide upon, and we just have, sure, I'll be a little slow in explaining the code, Aaron. So whenever I talk about such web services, alright, there has to be a common path wherein the client also responds or corresponds to the web service that is being returned. Alright. So that is how we do it. Sandeep, it's like I'll tell you the JSON is the standard and SOAP is now old. I'll tell you the difference between both. So what happens is the SOAP web services, if I talk about, are a lot easier to develop. Alright, it's a lot easier to create SOAP web services as compared to creating the JSON web services. So if I talk about the headache, or say the burden on the server part, is a lot less when we talk about the SOAP web services, which is a little more when we talk about the JSON web services. So the SOAP web services, ASMX web services are developed in .NET, so they get developed very quickly. However, which is not the case with the JSON objects. Alright, so that is how the complete things. That's correct. Integration is the client the part of the client here in the SOAP web services is I would say increased a little, but the server component is reduced a lot. So it's that way when we work about SOAP or when we work about the JSON. Both are REST-based web services though, but the complete implementation is a little different. Alright, so that is how the difference between SOAP and the JSON is done. Alright, so I was telling you about how we'll be creating all these text string. So here I create an array list of the type strings, create a JSON array. JSON array will be working on the tweets method, which will be returning in the JSON array. So here I have the URL string. I append the URL username to the string, create the get method, response, check whether the response is correct or not. Naman has asked me a question here. Is the JSON array also predefined? Didn't get your question, Naman. Are you asking about like the JSON array object is the one that is available to me? Are you talking about that? Yes, that's correct. We have the object available to us. Alright, so here check the status that whether the particular API, that is URL, is up or down. So if I get the status equal to 0, that means the URL is up, so I can request the various URLs. Here I create an entity, get the data from the entity, create all the JSON array with the help of these data. So here I create a new JSON array, add this up to the JSON array. If any process error occurs here, Devdutt has asked me a question, why 200? So if I talk about any response, Devdutt, the 200 response tells me that this client is active, this server is active. So that is why it is 200. It's like a, how should I tell you? It's more about the various request response models that we use. Naman has asked me a question here, but in Java with an array to find the length, we use the length attribute and not the length function. Didn't get this particular thing of yours, Naman. Where am I using the get method? Alright, Naman, it's like, it's more about, I'll tell you. If I talk about this JSON array, let me just tell you about a few things about this. So what happens is there are different implementations to these things, right? Like if I have a method which says dot, alright, so this is the method that is available to me from the JSON array object. It has nothing to do with the array list, Naman. Alright, JSON, what I did here was I created a array list of JSON arrays. It's of the object type of JSON. It is not the normal array list that I have created. So there is difference. I hope you understand this, Naman. It's like this particular object gives me the dot length method if I have to find the length of it. Alright, and similarly if I work on the array list, it gives me save. If I work on these vectors, it gives me the dot size. Similarly, if I work on the array list, it gives me the dot length. So that is different implementations that we have of the various methods. Alright, so here I have the array. I got all the array of objects, and then finally I return this array. Alright, when I returned this array, I was having this method. So this particular method gets the tweets for me. Alright, this particular method returns me the JSON array, and finally on the post execute, what I'm doing is I'm getting all the string variables from all tweet text. So where have I created the all tweet text here? This is the array list that is returned to me on the post execute. So in the do in background, I'm doing all text. I'm creating a string array. create the JSON array, get the JSON array here, iterate through the JSON array, add this all the objects one by one. Sure, I'll do that. Add all the objects one by one to this particular string array and return this string array. Once I return this string array, I'm just creating the string array on the post execute. Alright, so Aaron wants me to explain the code flow once again. So let me just go through it once. Create the client, then I have the show tweets method. Alright, so whenever I'll be clicking on the view, I'll be getting the show tweets method. I get the username, call the get tweets method. So this get tweets method, what it will do is it will create an async task, create all the text objects. Alright, sure Aaron, I'll be really slow. Create all the array objects, create a JSON array. This tweets method will return me all the JSON array objects. Once it gets to return me, I just take it in a JSON array, take the length, that is the count of the array, iterate through the array and assign every single item to the string array and return the string array to the calling method. Which is my calling method here? Tweets. And I say tweets.execute with the help of text, and that is how I'll be placing it up onto the text view. Here is the text view, TV HTTP, and here I show it on to the TV HTTPS on the post execute. If any person having any doubts, what I can do for all of you here is and let you all see the first code snippet, and if you have any problems anywhere, I think you can just ask me about them. Alright, if I go on to show you the graphical user interface, here is the graphical user interface. Is that all, Sandeep? Should I move back to the code now? Alright, take your time. Execute what? What should I execute? Execute the application. Alright. Here I key in your name. So this is how it works up. Now you want to see the code? Alright. You all can have a look at the code now. Just let me know whenever I have to scroll back down. Should I scroll down? Here is the variable for you. Aaron. Here what I'm doing is I'm requesting for the status, that is if the URL is up, and I'm getting all the objects. Once I get all the objects, I create the objects, array of the objects I retrieve back, and what I'm doing is appending all of them to an array list and then finally returning the array list. And on the post execute, I'm just displaying that array list objects. I hope this is clear to everyone now. Can you all respond back onto the chat window? That's correct, Devdutt. It's like, what should I say? It's like the for each loop that we have in Java. All right.